Hello everybody, welcome back to a new video. This is the second part in my little mini series about grid synths. If you haven't seen the first part, I highly recommend it that you watch that part first. We talk about the rhythm of grid synths. Today we're going to talk about the sound design, a few little tips you can give, and we're going to go in depth on how you can use sound design to add to the rhythm. Therefore it's important that you see my last video about that. Other than that, I would like to say that I forgot to mention that this was actually a request from someone on Reddit that I would cover this topic. If you have any topics you would like to see me cover, feel free to leave a comment down below. Maybe you have a song for which you really like a certain section, or you like a synth sound that you would like to see me make, or a particular type of bass arrangement that you would like to see, or just stuff in general, more general things that you would like to see me cover. Maybe a thing where I, for example, do a track from scratch all here on YouTube and go through the different steps there. If you would like that, please let me know, and I can get on with that. But without further ado, we're gonna go into the project and talk a little bit about sound design. Alright, here's the same project as the last time. In fact, I'm actually recording just after I recorded the other one. So I'm actually not gonna play it. If you want to see the whole thing and listen to the whole thing, as I said the last video, again, I highly recommend you to go through this thing in its entirety. But we're gonna go through some of the sounds, and we're gonna see some of the things that are really interesting, and we're just going to go through chronological order. What I do want to say though is that I didn't make all the sounds myself. The sounds in Grid Synth 2 are actually from a preset pack, and I'll go over why I chose them and what the things is I did with them is later, because there is some interesting stuff in there. But just so you know, I do tend to use presets sometimes, especially for these like background sounds and stuff like that. I don't want to go in and design every single sound myself. I think that's unreasonable, and if there's a sound that you really like inside the preset pack, hey, why not use it? But I did make these sounds, so we're going to go over them. We have two types of squelches, and squelches are these particular sounds that work really well for these kind of grid synths, because they are really sharp and can be filtered really extremely. And this is the first one. As you can hear, very easy sound. As you can see, we actually are low passing and cutting out most of the frequencies. If you turn off the filtering, you can really hear how it's evolving over time and stuff like that, and how there's a lot more high end than when we have the filter. The filter is actually part of the mixing part, which I'm gonna cover in the next video. But for now, let's just jump into the patch itself and kind of go over what a squelch is and how I did this one. So this was also based on a preset from the same pack where these sounds are from, but I actually did remake it myself. The main thing is that there is a bandpass filter, and in this case we're actually executing the bandpass filter by having two different filters, one being this EQ filter here, and the other one being this low pass filter here in the actual filter section. And it's a really easy patch. We're using one of the analog wavetables, which is this saw rounded, and if you turn it up, you can see now we have the lower harmonics, and the more you turn up the wavetable position, the more of the higher harmonics and the high end is starting to come through. So actually in some terms it's actually being filtered twice here, both through the wavetable position, which we modulate here, as well as through the actual filter here. And that kind of double thing kind of adds a little bit of extra depth to the filtering. It makes the filtering a little bit more extreme, as opposed to just having a saw wave there. And then again here we're also using macro 1 to modulate the EQ here. The main part of a squelch sound though, or at least this particular squelch sound, is the pitch modulation. And the pitch modulation we're doing here with LFO1, which is set to envelope. And as you can see, we're just modulating the coarse pitch. And what that does is it does something really interesting. It's where it's basically really fastly shooting the spectrum from high end to low end. And often that is actually paired with the same movement in the bandpass filter. So in this case, that would be through macro 1. Now, I haven't done it everywhere, but sometimes you can really hear that plucky sound. And then the movement of the pitch is basically paired with the bandpass, which means that you're basically playing the same frequencies, or at least partially the same frequencies, but they are shifting in, or you're playing the same harmonics, but they're shifting in frequency, which is a really cool sound effect here. And that's what creates a Psytrance squelch. So there's not really much more here. We have some effects. Again, we're gonna cover that in a later video, but as you can see, not much. We just have some OTT, reverb, and a delay here. I want to go over the second squelch, which is a bit more interesting. These two tracks actually contain the same patch, but one is panned right and the other is panned left. And again, we're gonna go over this in the next video, why I'm doing panning and how I do that and all that kind of stuff. But for now, I want to kind of go into this patch here. So as we open it up, you can immediately see that we're doing a few things differently. For one, we still have the same setup here where we have an LFO in envelope mode modulating the pitch of our main oscillator here, but it's also doing the volume. Now that kind of helps getting out some ringing things, some ringing after the sound dies down. We don't want it to sustain, we kind of want it to shut off, and therefore we're modulating the volume here. Second, you can see we're actually using a notch filter here, and the notch filter is controlled by the macro 2, and I don't remember why I did macro 2 and not macro 1. I think I was using that for something else before, but I decided maybe to combine them or to stop using macro 1. But for now you need to know macro 2 is controlling this filter cutoff, but you can see it's just a little bit. We just want to get the lower frequencies modulated here, or cut out here. And one of the ways we're doing that is through this notch 24 filter here. If we go to the effects, you can kind of see we have the same thing going on. We have multiple filters basically doing the same thing, and therefore reinforcing the overall filtery feeling. As you can see, we have a low pass filter here. This is more to kind of cut off the unwanted low frequencies that we don't want in our sound. Then we have a high pass here, which again using this macro opens up. And we also have this band pass here, where we modulate both the cutoff and the fatness. And then finally that all goes to some fairly heavy distortion. Now what this does is it creates a really sharp wave, which then gets even sharper through its distortion. As you can see, we're mostly distorting the high frequencies here, and some of the mid-range is being distorted. But that gives this really cool sounding effect. If I actually solo both of them, you can really hear the effect it's given. And keep in mind that all the sounds are just being made by changing the position of the filters, therefore moving the macro 2. I think there might be, yeah, okay, I actually had the modulation turned off here. As you can hear, there's this nice strange filtering going on, and that's the combination of all these filters, mostly the notch filter and all these filters here going through the distortion. And I think it would be better distinguishable if you actually play it without the main filter here on the group. You can really hear that there are small differences in the high end there, and that all comes from the way we do this filtering. So as you can hear, all these sounds are very, very sharp. What I did is I took some sounds that are really, really sharp and really, really well, fairly heavy in a transient, and I used those to fill up group 1, which if you have seen the first video, you will know is used to add extra rhythmic elements to our drop here. So these sounds lend themselves very well for that, but for this grid synth group number 2 here, we're actually using a different type of sound. We're using warmer, pluckier sounds almost. With some exceptions, these are all plucky sounds. I'm quickly gonna let you listen to them on their own, and then we'll dive into the patch here. Again, as I said, I didn't really make these from scratch, but we can go through the patch and kind of see what's going on. What I want you to kind of realize from this thing is how we actually use these presets and how we chose these presets. In general, what I was looking for was a little bit of a less sharp and a more rounded, warmer sound, if that makes sense. If you heard these sounds, you know they're very sharp, very high-end kind of thing, and here I wanted a little bit smoother, warmer sounds to kind of contrast between this sound and the sounds that we have in this group. Again, this group is here to enforce the rhythm that we already had, so a separate function also means a separate type of sound in this case, and which is a really cool trick. So let's open up the first patch here. I'm gonna open up the main one here, and as you can see, what they are doing doesn't really matter. The main thing is that we see a saw wave here and a lot of harmonics, meaning that there's a lot of warmth, as well as being able to have a low pass filter. And those two things really matter because the low pass filter really helps in getting that warm mid-range through, and the soft wave is actually the wave that has the most harmonic content, and therefore also the most warmth to it. More harmonic content means a warmer sound, and together with all these other things, they create a really nice warm sound. That was the sound that we were going for. We also have some other things that don't really matter. We have some delay and reverb, which I turned off for this preset. We have the EQ thing, which I don't really know how it's set up. Yeah, here a high pass, so that doesn't really matter. What matters is that this cutoff knob here is modulating this filter cutoff, so we have something that we can modulate to kind of make it sound plucky. And if we actually look at the automation we've done here, you can see that I have turned them, this is the cutoff, you can see that I have turned them down over time, so you get that nice plucky feeling that we have. And again here, as you can see, we have this nice plucky feeling down there. These two are actually the same patch. The only difference being, because this is on the offbeat, what I decided to do is I decided to just turn it down a little bit. Turn down the amount of filter cutoff modulation that we're doing, therefore creating a less intense sound. And as we talked about in the last video, because this is not on our pulse here, we are using sound design in this case to give it a little bit less energy, to make it less important to the rhythm, because we're falling into a pink section there. So yeah, the last sound I want to show you is this one. Again, this is from a preset, so I am not going to go in full detail here, but this is what it sounds like. And basically I went in here with the same philosophy. If you open it up, you can see a lot of harmonics. In this case, we are using a square wave here, as you can see, but it's still the same concept where we have a filter modulation, which by turning it down kind of highlights the lower area, the lower mid-range, giving you that nice little warm, or that nice warm sound that I was after in this case. We also have some other things here. We have a lot of sound design, but again, as you can see, I've turned off the delay and the reverb for these patches, so we can later add our own. So that is really it for the patch, but again, as you can see, we're using a macro here, and this is the scan macro, which is again routed to the filter cutoff. It also seems to be routed to somewhere else, but I don't know where. Probably this thing, but that's not active at the moment, so forget that. It is routed to the filter cutoff. That is what matters, and we can again use that to control the warmth of our sound here. And if you look at it, you can really see again how we are using it to, on the off beats, have a little bit of modulation, and then here we completely open up the filter and have high end, more energy, more so more higher end stuff going on, and therefore more recognizable and therefore more energy. Again, with the same philosophy that on the off beats, in the pink area, we want less energy and less rhythmic content. Therefore we have this slide in here, which you can really hear. And then here we have the main pluck, and then we have just a little pluck behind it to just a little bit enforce the rhythm, but not go overboard, not going too extreme. So that's that's kind of the sound design part of it. In the next video we're gonna cover the mixing. I'm gonna show you some more cool tips to kind of put the rhythm together and stuff like that, and also make that sit in your mix below your main synth. In this case, sometimes it's not below main synth and in a drop, and there would be different mixes elements for this, but in this case it's below a main synth, so we're gonna talk about that. Hopefully I can upload that tomorrow, if I get that all right. And for now, I hope to see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe. That really helps the channel. Also, leave a like. That also helps me out a lot, kind of shows me what you guys like to see more of. If you actually have a suggestion for a video you would like to see, feel free to leave them in the comments, and hopefully I can work my way into getting to more requested topics like that. But for now, bye bye, and I hope to see you next time.